Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone joining from the West Coast. Good afternoon, everyone joining from the East Coast. We are going to be in your neighborhood in a few short days. So we're excited. Hopefully we will see you all at Female Founders Day. Before we kick off, some introductions. I'm April Bradford. I'm head of programming and events for Female Founder Collective in the 10th House. I am joined today with Rebecca Minkoff and Allie Wyatt, our co-founders of Female Founder Collective. Allie is also an angel investor, CEO of the North, the 10th House, FFC. So she really does it all, and so does Rebecca, which we'll get into how they do so many things so gracefully. Rebecca is the co-founder of the 10th House and Female Founder Collective. She's a creator and designer. She's also a podcaster and author, as well as a mother of 4 now. So again, these two do so many things. The three of us will see you all on March 21st in NYC at Female Founders Day in Industry City, which we're so excited about. We're excited about many things. One of the things that we are honored to discuss today is a grant. Which I would like to read through something very specific because I don't want to miss any details. So we're kicking off today's Q&A with a few special announcements, starting with an amazing new grant program. Dan and Lightenfit and FFC believe that women entrepreneurs should feel empowered to go after what they crave in life and in business. Together, in celebration of Women's History Month, we are introducing a new funding opportunity for female founders through the grant program. 5 qualified women entrepreneurs will be selected to receive a $10,000 grant. That's 5 different women are going to receive this life-changing grant. On top of that, they are going to get a 1-hour session with a selected expert advisor through the North, which is our advisory platform, and then a 1-year membership to FFC's The 10th House, which is where we host in-person and virtual programming events. We allow you to meet each other really wherever you need to based on what your pain points and goals are as an entrepreneur. So we're really excited to be able to bring all of these things to you through our partnership with Dan and Lightenfit. And for those of you who are interested in the 10th House, apply now to our health and tech cohort. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop those into the chat. Normally I'm the one commenting during these things, but since I'm moderating today, I will still see your comments, but I would love to know where you're joining from and then what questions you have for Rebecca and Allie, because we will be taking questions, which I'm going to start now. But before that, if you are interested in applying for the grant, go to the 10thhouse.femalefoundercollective.com, and on our homepage, you will see that access link to get into that grant. So I'm going to jump right in because we had over 300 people RSVP today, and which means I had over 300 questions to go through today. And I selected the ones that we got the most questions about. So Allie, this first one's for you, and it's also, this question is from another Allie W. And that is, Allie, what is your approach to angel investing? How do you identify the right amount of capital and personal time investment you put into new businesses, just knowing that you're a CEO of several companies and a mother as well?
So I would say from an angel investing standpoint, there's sort of a general rule of thumb that you shouldn't put more than like 5 to 10% of your net worth into angel businesses, basically because of the risk profile of those particular businesses, meaning unfortunately, there's a very low degree of probability that businesses will succeed. I actually do have tips on increasing that probability that we can talk about later. But the notion of putting your money in, you're also not going to see it for probably at least 10 years. That's the average time horizon. So when you're thinking about angel investing, you have to think about, I'm not going to see this money for a very long time. And the likelihood of it succeeding is very low. So it's money that you're comfortable parting with, in other words. I would say from a strategy standpoint, I like to invest in businesses that I feel like I can help with based off of my expertise, based off of my relationships, based off of my experiences, so that I see a business and I'm like, not only do I believe in the problem that they're solving and the way that they've articulated how they're solving that problem, the way that they've articulated, here's the size of the market, here is the size of the opportunity, this is what our projections look like ultimately. But I want to invest in the person, and then I also want to invest in what they're doing if I feel like I could introduce them to a major partner that could, at the end of the day, ultimately get them an additional PO for their business or a brand partnership that will transform the size of their company and ultimately their impact and ability to scale. So I don't necessarily look just at industry, even though I do have certain industry expertise. I'm more looking at what can I do to help that business. And then just from a time standpoint, the reality is running a business, as you all know, is super, super time intensive, and you have to put your priority on your business or else it's not going to succeed. And so I also have to know that I could do those things with relatively low effort. But I also like to have a conversation with the founder up front of what are your expectations? What do you want from me on your cap table? What can I do for you? What kind of introductions are you looking for? What does your team look like right now? Because I think it's really important on both sides to be very realistic with what you want out of the relationship. Because I think when you do have angels on your cap table, there's a lot that they can do. But if you don't articulate that to them and you don't sort of share what you need out of the relationship, then it's not going to ultimately be beneficial.
Yeah, that conversation is so necessary. And I think setting those expectations up front will help you decide what time and what money looks like. Just before we jump into the next question, I'm seeing so many people joining from across the globe. We've got St. Louis, Austin, DC, Seattle, Florida, Cleveland, Brooklyn. Brooklyn will be in Brooklyn in a couple of days. So appreciate you all joining us live today.
Grew up in St. Louis. I'd love to see St. Louisans in the mix.
Yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
This next question is for Rebecca, and it's from Jill R. And that is, Rebecca, what are your top 3 non-negotiables for your vision for your brand each season? You know, as trends change, what are the 3 things that you're like, these are my 3 consistents?
I think that a couple years ago, we took the decision to stop being a brand that was inspired by different places and themes, if you will. A lot of designers are very thematic. They went to Portugal, they went to Barcelona, whatever it is. We are a downtown New York brand. That is what we are messaging all the time. And so it's really about taking that lens and not altering what that brand promises. You will always see our brand codes. We went and we said, what is this brand known for? The dog foot, the studs, the zippers, leather, embellishments. And so every season's going to have those brand codes, and it's going to celebrate the downtown New York personality. Now, I was born in San Diego. I grew up there for the quarter of my life. And so you're always also going to see there's going to be a lightness. You know, it's not always heavy, especially in the spring. So it's balancing that as a non-negotiable. Those are 2 things. The third thing that is non-negotiable is that we just want to make sure that we continue to offer great quality at a great price. I think, you know, when I meet a woman who's had my bag for 10 plus years and it's still in beautiful condition, it's just testament to the strides we make to ensure that you always have something as a product that will last a long, long time.
Absolutely. I love that. Allie, this next question is for you, and it's from Charlie. And that is, what is your advice on how to become less overwhelmed as a multi-CEO, or even for people who are solo founders or solo CEOs?
I read a lot and basically follow a lot of individuals that have multiple businesses on Instagram, and they talk a lot about batching your time, right? And sort of compartmentalizing everything. So creating these sort of starts and stops where if I don't finish it in this time frame, then on to the next. So that it allows you to not spend too much or dwell too much in one particular task. It also allows you to basically prioritize, right? So if you know you only have a certain amount of time to finish something, then you're going to approach the task a lot differently, right? You have to make sure that you're going to get it done. So I think it's a lot of that. It's a lot of batching. It's a lot of delegation too, knowing what you are good at and what you're expeditious at versus not. So finding team members, like Avery is incredible at things that I really stink at. And so having team members that you know can jump in and manage certain things a heck of a lot better than you will. But the reality is I'm not managing multiple businesses, right? So within FFC, and I don't recommend that, frankly. If you're the CEO of the business, it's really difficult to manage multiple businesses. So for FFC, for example, I'm CEO over the North and I'm CEO over Female Founder Collective, which includes 10th House. But all of those things are part of the same ecosystem and they're all part of the same levers. We're trying to cross-pollinate as much as possible. And the entire reason we created the North is so that we could help super serve our members of the 10th House. So we're not thinking about them in like totally separate batches. That said, the North needs more of my time, frankly, than I give it. So I think it's just being very realistic with the fact that you can really only do, in my opinion, one business at once really well. And so just knowing where you want to put that focus and that effort and then delegating.
Yeah, delegation is big. And we're going to get to that actually here in a little bit. But this next question is for both of you. And that is, what tips do you have for gaining corporate partners for communities? And Ali, you mentioned partnerships earlier, how that was something that you looked to when investing in a company. Can you bring on partners? So what does that process look like? And what tips do you have for those seeking partners? Rebecca, let's start with you.
When you say corporate partners, you mean corporate sponsorships or like what kind of partners?
I would assume sponsorships, yes, unless this person meant maybe like brand collaborations or content collaborations, things like that. So I suppose you could look at it from any of those angles.
Okay. So I think that for us, and I'll let Ali talk more about the partnerships on the FFC side. We have corporate partners on Rebecca Minkoff and FFC. It's finding the brands that align with your brand promise and your brand purpose. And it's then getting really creative on how you're going to help them get their vision and their goals aligned that also complement yours. So I'll take an example that we did on the Rebecca Minkoff side with Morgan Stanley. They wanted to reinvent the Baker bag. They felt like it was a symbol for a man proudly walking through, and women didn't like it. And they wanted to make a lot of the partners and employees at Morgan Stanley feel proud to be working there. So they came to me to redesign and reimagine what a banker bag looks like for a woman. If you're like, what is even a banker bag, period? It's this, before me, really ugly, almost like gym bag that usually has the name of the bank on it. And the men take it to their golf and they take it to their racquetball and then they take it to the office. And women were kind of left out of that conversation. And I think, and Alice, the CMO of Morgan Stanley, feels that symbols are incredibly powerful. And so they wanted women to have the symbol. So we came together, we designed a beautiful, we called it the Morning After Bag 2.0. You could put a computer in it, you could take it to work, you could take it to racquetball if that's what you did, or pickleball, whatever the trending thing is. And so they were able to get inside their firm a lot of pride, a lot of excitement. We made over 1,000 bags for these women, and a renewed sense of dedication to their firm. And in exchange, we got to have this huge amplification of the brand in the news. We did a big fashion show to kick it off. That was very also tech forward. So that was where you have two Venn diagrams kind of meet. And that's when it's a perfect partnership. So I think you have to go out, find those like-minded partners. Funding can be tough, but it's figuring out how to get creative. Sometimes we'll encounter a company that doesn't have budget in one department, but then they go to another and get buy-in. So it's being willing to sort of look outside the box and just know that you're going to have a lot of no's before you get a yes. You're not going to like hit it out of the park immediately. And right now money is tight, but there are brands spending in the space.
Absolutely. I think the Venn diagram is super helpful. And Rebecca Moore said, love that, a banker bag for women. It's genius. Okay, this next question is for you, actually, Rebecca, and that is, any tips for scaling beyond your first 1 million? Any tips for scaling beyond your first 1 million? I know we talked a little bit about delegation, so you could go in deeper there, or anything outside of that.
I think that it's critical that you find, hopefully, if you have a business and you're trying to get to 1 million, product market fit, but then taking your hero product, what is the magic rule of 80-20. So 80% of your sales come from 20% of your items. What is that 20? and what is the hero in that mix that can be your loss leader. We found that when we took our famous morning after mini clutch or mini Mac, we made it $195, which was competitively priced. No one in the market had crossbody at that price. We didn't make money at first on that bag. It was like, okay, we're breaking even, if not losing a little, but we knew we could outsell that bag. We can go back to our factories. We can renegotiate based on quantity. That took the lead, and that grew our business like over 3 years, 548%. So I think you can take a look at your assortment and go, okay, good. What is that hero thing? We're going to talk about message, no-brainer purchase, 3-second buy, and pour a lot of attention on that, and then that will begin to fund your other items and endeavors.
Genius. I love that. I love stats and numbers. I feel like that makes all of this information so easy to apply. Allie, this next question is for you, and it's from Bianca, and that is, as a service-based business, how do you find consistent clients or customers, or is it pretty up and down?
So I had a service-based business just for like a year and a half. So I'm not the preeminent expert on this, but I did have consistent clients, and I made a pretty good amount of money doing it. And really what I did to start out was say, how much money do I want to make at the end of this year? And what does that mean from a retainer perspective? What do I need to bring in on each client? And realistically, how much time can I spend on each client, right? And so I would create scopes based off of that. My point in saying that is the way that I actually ultimately found clients to begin with was doing a trial run. I find so many times service providers are like, in order to have a call with me, you need to pay a consultation fee. I so recommend against that, because the reality is that there are plenty of people, 98% of people are not doing that. And unless you are totally filled with clients, which could be the case, then maybe you do that, right? But otherwise you're going to get, I would do the qualifying up front, to make sure that this time spent that you're doing with somebody, a consultation that is free, on the other end of it, they have the capacity to pay you, right? Because you could be dealing with somebody that is just wanting stuff for free, which is the other side of it. But I would do your research. If the person has money or the business has money, make a very specified sort of time frame that you will help them, or part of a project that you'll help them on, so they can see your work. Because honestly, as FFC, when we're hiring service providers, it's really hard to assess how somebody works, how they think, unless we actually do an engagement together. And also the reality is you don't want to work with a business that doesn't understand your value and that you don't gel with anyways. So if you start working with somebody and they're paying you from the onset, or you require a minimum of 3 months right out of the gate, and it is whatever the retainer is, you can get locked into a relationship that doesn't work for either side, frankly. So I think those consultations for free, it allows you to sort of date each other, get a sense of whether or not this relationship could work, whether your expertise could be really valuable for that business. And then if it does, then they're going to want to pay you because they're going to see the value that you provide. But always say, here are my deliverables that I'm going to provide you. This is what to expect from me each month, or whatever the time frame is, because at the end of the day, it's going to be a bad relationship if you aren't on the same page as far as expectations, deliverables, outcomes, ultimately of that. And then the referrals will just keep going. And frankly, that's what happened in my service-based business, is I kept getting referred to other pieces of business. And the successful service providers I know, they don't even have to go out and hunt because they have so many referrals, but they all start with the free engagements.
Yep, I love that. Setting your goal of what you want to make at the end of the year, working backwards, and prioritizing quality over quantity so you can get those referrals. Rebecca, this next question is from Cardin. And that is, Rebecca, Was there a point that felt like a failure, but in hindsight was a breakthrough?
Oh my gosh, there's like 100 of those. They happen every day. Um, I think that as a company, you're going to go through so many different evolutions, and sometimes you prioritize what you think is important and it might not be. So, in the very beginning, we couldn't afford anyone in quality control. We leaned very heavily on our factory to do that for us. It turned out that was a huge mistake. And at the time, it didn't even occur to me to have, someone be wearing double hats, like hire a production person who's also great at quality control. Um, and what ended up happening is my bags got made with Kate Spade's hardware. And I got this fun nickname, Quebecca's Minkoff. And my bags were at Saks, at Nordstrom, at Bloomingdale's, all with this mixed hardware. And it was mortifying. We turned it into this Willy Wonka moment where if you found the bag, you got a free one. Still really embarrassing. But I think that for us, where you sometimes think it's okay to cut a corner, sometimes it's not. And it's like always good to make a list of the things that it might seem frivolous to save money on when it's that tight. And then there's just you know what, if you're known for your quality and you're known for, it's your first time making goods overseas, which it was when that happened, there are certain rules that need to be applied. I think it's best to just pick people's brains that have been there and done that. Like, what did you do before you moved to overseas production? What are the musts that have to happen? Because you don't know until this stuff happens to you and you're like underneath your desk sobbing, like I was. And so it's always good to ask experts, get a list of non-negotiables and make sure that stays intact.
I had no idea that happened. And I've interviewed you a couple of times now. That's horrifying, but I mean, you learn from it. Allie, this next one's from Belinda, and these are actually going to be two questions. So the first question is, where are the best places to find investors? And then the second part of that is, what advice do you have for those who aren't seeking VC? Where else can they look for funds? So let's start with best places to find investors.
So best places to find investors, we actually, not to sort of plug FFC, but that is one of our primary goals, is to connect our founders with investors. We don't make one-to-one introductions, so I want to be totally upfront about that. But what we've started doing this year is every single month, we are having what we called FFC experts, and that's in New York or LA. We host events for 50 to 60 people, predominantly our members. If there's room, we'll let in additional people, but typically there's not room. But we will bring in various investors that invest in that particular cohort that we're supporting. So maybe in women's health, or perhaps it's more aligned to beauty or fashion. We bring people in that are in our close network to have these really intimate conversations, frankly, going deep into how they think about investing, maybe some of the businesses they've seen be successful. So regardless, you're going to learn really about their journeys and different business tips on how to be successful. But it also is a really great way to network and sort of get to meet these people on a more sort of one-on-one basis and introduce your business. The other way is we do grants, and this Female Founders Day on Thursday, we're doing our first ever pitch demo. And so we're actually going to have 30 to 40 investors in the room alongside the judging panel, who are also investors. So that's a great way to get out there. There's also pitch demos happening a lot all over the country and in other organizations. I highly recommend signing up for those because it's really great exposure for your business regardless. So you can move the needle on your sales or potential brand partnerships, even if you don't get ultimately that investment. The other thing is, I always say, start creating relationships early. Look up and try to see who is actually investing in your space and who is investing in your strategy. Most VC funds, their website is it says, how they invest, the types of industries they invest in. And I do find that a lot of times founders aren't doing that homework, and then they're spending a lot of time knocking on the wrong doors, which ultimately will sort of never open for them. That said, if you have friends that know investors, which everybody has friends that know investors. Be out there messaging that you're raising money. You never know where it could come from an angel investor side. But also, even if a fund, and a friend of yours might know a VC partner, even if that fund doesn't invest in your industry or your type of business, everybody runs closely together. They do co-investments. And so they can pass you along or direct you to the funds that are really interested in your business or the problem that you're solving. So get out there, spread the word. And then if you are not right for VC funding, which to be honest, most businesses are not, loans, bootstrapping, to be honest, I think we're going closer to a world in this market where you need to have a profitable business, right? So I've been so surprised at how many founders I speak to who don't know their forecast for the year or for the next year. They don't know what their goals are, but you can't run a profitable business or you can't stay in business unless you have some form of forecast. So that's the first thing I do. Every single business I've started is, okay, what do our numbers need to be? Because that way you never end up in a situation where you've no cash on hand or you're like, wait, my numbers didn't hit where they needed to be in order for me to stay in business, which is the sort of disaster that no founder wants to come up against. But when you take that to the bank's going to expect to see 3 to 5 year projections as well. Any angel investors are going to expect to see 3-year projections for the most part. There's also, if you are a slightly bigger business, $1 million plus, there's things like Dwight Funding and Settle that actually provide you with they're sort of like revenue sharing loans against a particular product line that you're launching. So those are great options, but it is a little bit industry specific. And then grants. There's a lot of government funding and small business grants with the SBA, for example. You can actually find out where grants are happening. And I've seen people have as much as $4 million of funding against their business, and it's all non-dilutive, right? They're not taking equity. So that's another great place as well.
And I don't know if this was mentioned. Sorry, Wi-Fi just shut off and shut
All
back
good.
on. But thank you for carrying on. I don't know if you mentioned this, but you mentioned something really important, that was doing your research. And on the North, our advisory platform, we have access to investors. So you can set up one-on-ones with investors and discuss your pitch, discuss your financials, and they can give you tips on how to improve before those no's become really important. So that's something that is super helpful. And then, Allie, I just heard you mention grants as well. Definitely sign up for the Dan and Light and Fit grant program that we have, because like I said earlier, we have 5 $10,000 grants that are going to be given out later this year. So really excited about that. A couple of more questions before we wrap up here in 15 minutes. This next one is from Ace H for you, Rebecca. And that is, how are you navigating the new landscape of fashion with retail partners and seasonable deliverables? What percentage of your business do you focus on D2C versus retail?
So our D2C and retail mix right now is, I would say, 60-40, 60% wholesale, 40% direct to consumer. I was told by a very smart man many years ago, the perfect optimization of this is 30 brick and mortar, 30 direct to consumer, 30 wholesale. And this was before the whole DTC boom. We've seen a lot of companies slide backward who were just direct to consumer. And we never went away from wholesale. The only time we went dark on wholesale was during the beginning of the pandemic, when all of our orders were canceled from wholesale. But outside of that, it's always been a part of our business and a necessary part of our business. I'm sure everyone tuning in has seen the cost escalating to acquire a customer online. And so as that continues to happen, it is more and more important to make sure that you have other visibility, specialty stores, wholesale, department stores. I will caveat it with, you need to be of a certain size and awareness before you should ever go into a department store. If you can imagine yourself walking in and you're hit on all the sides, right? That outer side is every big brand that has millions, if not billions of dollars to invest in advertising, commercials, sexy celebrities. And then they're going to find your podunk little sign, or maybe not even a sign, on some random cupboard. Like, you have to have enough awareness and brand heat for someone to go look for you in that cupboard. And so my former sales rep was adamant, like, you need 500 specialty stores in the United States before you should ever sell to wholesale, because there's enough people walking down Main Street in the middle of, Idaho and Tennessee and Nashville that have seen and heard your name, that when they go to a big box retailer like a Bloomingdale's, a Saks, and Nordstrom, they will know and recognize your name and feel like they can trust that brand. So I know, again, a lot of people think the cure is wholesale. I'm going to be so huge. Well, guess what? How are you funding that order, right? I think that when people see like, oh, I just want to get into Target. Well, that is a lot of cost just to like produce those numbers. If you don't know what you're doing and you make a lot of mistakes, you pay for it dearly, let me tell you. And so you also have to be infrastructurally, if that's a word, ready for those big orders. And that comes with size and scale. So again, this is not the quick way to make big bucks. Oftentimes you lose money selling in the beginning to wholesale. So start with specialty stores, start with grassroots efforts, start with pop-up shops, start, like different markets, start with Tupperware parties, the old fashioned kind. And then when you're ready and big enough, move into wholesale and make sure that's a really strong part of your business.
I love that. Melissa Wallace says 30, 30, 30, brilliant. And Heidi Yeager says, love it. Yes, love these. This next one is for both of you. And I feel like we've touched on this a little bit, but so let's, Allie, bring this to you. What's your best advice for taking your business to that next level? So let's say you've been stuck and you've kind of plateaued and you're looking for that thing that's going to hurl you into the next stage of your business growth. What are some of those things that are tried and true?
I would say the two main ways I've seen that happen historically in the other businesses that I've been part of that have scaled is people. So looking across your team and identifying what is that major area. Maybe you are finding you spend so much time on one particular thing that you can't actually get out and do something else that you feel like you're really good at, right? Like for me, I love being in brand partnership conversations. I love thinking about new business. I love thinking about how can we make new forms of revenue. And when I get stuck in the day-to-day of the business, the details of the sort of weeds of, whether it's email marketing or content creation or trying to just make sure that we're operating efficiently, that's not time I could be spending on other ways we can make money for the business. So I would look at those and then identify, okay, who can help me move that entirely off my plate, right? I liken this to a conversation we had with the founders of 21 Seeds. They had an amazing exit for their business. And they said it was all people, right? It was all about because that enabled their founders to clear the field, is what they called it, so that they could sprint at the things that they were really great at. And they had for them, it was a really incredible salesperson that they could sort of give the reins to, and then they could sort of develop what are the things we are selling, what is the marketing positioning, which is what they felt like they were really good at and they needed to spend their time doing. So I would really look at your business and see where are the sort of time sucks happening that are not generating return on my investment, return on the business revenue, in other words. And then the other thing that I would say is I would look at the business and actually look at, and we do this with our external CFO, look and see what parts of the business are you actually getting a good return from, and do it sort of departmentally. So maybe there are certain products that you have and the products you think are great, right? And it's something you're super excited about, but at the end of the day, the consumer is not buying, or maybe it's at a price point that from a marketing expense perspective doesn't actually make sense. Or maybe you have a service offering that is priced the wrong way, or it's frankly not what people want. Maybe there's something else that is a pattern that you keep seeing that they do want. So be willing to make little pivots in the business and try things, because sometimes you'll actually find, and I'm sure Rebecca can speak to this with different parts of her business, you're like, oh wow, I was not thinking that we were this type of business, but we actually are. Maybe belts were much bigger than she had anticipated, or maybe it was that you thought that you were a shoe business, but that actually was not a capital efficient way to sort of be spending your time and energy as a business.
Katia Conte says great advice, and Crystal Food says agreed. So love that, and keep the comments coming. I love how active this group is today. I think we have time for maybe 2 to 3 more questions. This one is for you, Rebecca, and that is, as a fashion founder, I have found venture capital to be very resistant to the sector. What is your advice for fundraising when venture seems very sector resistant? So this is a specific fashion question.
I'd say they shouldn't be investing in fashion. I would agree with them. I think when people look at VC, if you look at historically what they invest in, it's technology-based companies, not heavily inventoried industries. It's companies that can have this huge hockey stick growth. Well, fashion doesn't have hockey stick growth usually, unless a ton of money is pumped into it, and then you see a sheer off a cliff. If you look at Allbirds, look what happened with them, or some of the other really big companies that I wouldn't even call them fashion, but consumer goods that then tanked after getting pumped with that. I'd say grow slow, grow profitably. Apparel brands can grow. You should be looking at alternative sources of capital, like a Factor that I mentioned. When you have a profitable company, there is heat behind, I would consider going to private equity if you do need to raise funds, or friends and family. But I would definitely not even bother with VC unless you have some sort of huge tech innovation that I'm not aware of that could vastly propel and differentiate your business.
Yeah, honest and helpful advice. Allie, this next one is for you, and that is, what's the number one thing startups need to do to avoid an early mistake that is toughest to recover from? So what are some early mistakes you see for startup founders?
Going back to the forecast, not. So 2 things. I know this is sort of a theme with me, but going back to the forecast, not having a forecast is a recipe for disaster. I think it was, I'm trying to remember what founder actually said this. This was a founder of multiple $100 million business. And she was saying, not having a plan is planning to fail. And I 100% agree with that. You can create a roadmap for your own success. You're not going to hit the different sort of metrics perhaps that you set, or you might, but you need to know how you're going to get there. So I think that that's number one, is just oftentimes businesses are like, I'm too young, or like, I don't have any revenue yet. So how do I create a forecast? You can still start to sort of walk through, how am I going to go about executing on this business? So I think that's really important. And then I think it's not hiring soon enough is, trying to do everything yourself is also a recipe for disaster. And I find so many founders, you really become a Jill of all trades, right? You are doing so much in the business, and that is so important and so needed to be scrappy at the beginning, certainly, especially if you're bootstrapping. But by not investing in other people coming and taking stuff off your plate, you're just never going to move forward, because you're going to be stuck trying to be good at the stuff you're not good at, because that's what the business needs, when really there are people that you could afford to pay out there. And I'll give a quick example of this. We actually, in one startup I was in, we were like, oh, we can't afford to hire another person. And this was for me, I needed to be able to focus on sales. We ultimately went and hired another person. And just to give you a sense of numbers, we were doing $200K when we had gone to hire somebody. And we'd been doing $200K for like a year and a half. And when we hired that person, we went to the next year, we went to 10 million in sales. Like that is the kind of difference we're talking about. And that person was expensive, but the return was so massive that it just really proves out that if you can take stuff off your plate again, then you're going to be able to magnify the business and accelerate.
I love that. Getting so many comments on that answer. Investing in stellar people is critical. Mariana K is wondering thoughts on hiring contractors and not full time. Do you think that's a good thing for growing businesses?
I think I actually think for every business, if you can start out hiring contractors that could ultimately become full-time, that's the route I would suggest, because it's, again, on both sides, it's great because it's dating before you invest fully in this person, because if you onboard the wrong person, it also can be incredibly destructive for your business. And then taking the time to re-interview for that person and then the time it takes to re-onboard that person is a lot. So try to get it right. And that contracting period is super important. The other thing from a contracting standpoint that I think is really great is you don't have the same overhead as you're going to have with a full-time employee. But I also would assess, how integral is that function for your business? But again, I think it's a really great thing. The sort of best case scenario and best formula is if you can hire contractors that ultimately could come on full time.
Super helpful. The same question I'm going to ask the both of you, and then one final question before we wrap up. And that is, Rebecca, how far in advance do you plan for the future in your business? And how much of it is just day to day?
If you're talking about designs and production, we design about a year out at the moment. And that is annoying because trends are changing every day. But with our supply chain and the time they need, and boating versus air and all the pieces of the puzzle, it's about a year. And if we see something hit and we know it's working, we are usually able to get back into that within 6 weeks. And if we see that we have not been participating in something and now because of TikTok, we need to do something else, sometimes we can beg our factory for small favors to get into an arena and be a part of it. But that doesn't mean you should be part of every trend and be part of everything that's hot, because you want to stand for something that your customers can close their eyes and know that that's that brand. That's why they come to you. And oftentimes you'll find when brands do become everything to everybody, they kind of lose their soul. So, we learn that the hard way. And so I think for us, it's being like, all right, cool, we're not part of that. And that's okay. That's not for us. That's for someone else to do.
All right. What about you, Allie? How far in advance do you plan in the future versus how much is day to day or month to month or week to week?
I would say I'm trying to make the space I want to always be at least 2 years out, know what's going to happen next year, and then also what's going to happen the next year. And this is from a forecasting perspective. But I typically plan for the year coming, it's starting in September, October timeframe, start thinking about, okay, what does the business look like in the next calendar year? What are our targets look like? What are sort of the main events that are going to happen for product businesses? It's like, what products are we going to be launching for tech businesses? It's like, what milestones and what benchmarks are we going to hit? How many users are we going to have? For service-based businesses, it's how much money do I want to make at the end of the year? And how many clients do I think I can realistically take on? But I think always starting to think about that in that September, October timeframe, which is so hard because you're going into holiday and frankly, September, October tends to be some of the busiest time of the year, but sort of setting aside a 2-3 hour session with your outsourced CFO or your co-founder or your management team. I think that's a good time to start looking towards the next year.
Amazing. And Rebecca, to you, Q Nicole said, yes, don't lose your soul. Okay, final question. And before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you to Dan and Light and Fit for this partnership. We are so excited to be able to award, 5 different founders, these $10,000 grants. We're super excited about this. And this is the technical virtual kickoff to that partnership, even though we opened it up before, but really excited about that. Also very excited about Female Founders Day. So my last question is for you, Allie, and that is, what can founders expect to experience at Female Founders Day on March 21st in NYC?
If you're joining us, come say hi. Couldn't be more excited. It's, to be honest, the most stressful week of the year for the FSC team. I mean, Avery planned this whole thing from a programming standpoint. So huge kudos to her. And we will be running around with hair on fire, but we definitely want to meet you. But that being said, it's the reason why we do it, guys, is because it's just the best, most magical day. And here's why. We want it to be something that is simultaneously inspirational for you, where you can come in and hear from these people that have built businesses, that have exited businesses. They've done it and they know the pain and they know how hard it is. And they've been through those ups and downs, and they now can reflect alongside you and share some really key insights on what were those sort of make or break points, or what were those times, and how did they handle it, and how might have they handled it better, or how did they handle it well? So we're going to be sharing really specific learnings with you that are sort of unvarnished, right? Showing you the truth of what it is to build those businesses. And those are in more sort of panel discussions, and in some cases, keynote discussions. And then we break it out into tracks so that you can actually get learning, right? We want you to walk away with a toolkit to be like, okay, I know I'm going to do X, Y, and Z in my business now, because we know how important your time is and how much of an investment this is. So we're bringing in, again, people that don't necessarily instruct normally. In fact, most of them don't. And Avery has worked really hard with them to create these workshops for you, where they're going to give you a toolkit, right? Based off of their domain expertise on whether it's how to build teams, how to be a better leader, how to have a great mindset, right? So everything that it takes to be a leader in a soft skills standpoint, to how to think about funding. What are sources of funding you can think about outside of just venture capital? Or if venture capital is the route you want to take, what are ways to optimize for success? And that's from Anu Dugal, who is the founder of Female Founders Fund, and is extraordinary, has incredible businesses in her portfolio. And then we, of course, have how to market and make money from founders who, like the founder of Poppy, is going to be talking about social content, right? And she's done an incredible job with her business.
Fastest growing beverage brand in the US.
Which is insane. So you have somebody like that teaching you, what did she do? What were the sort of keys to her success? And then, of course, we have, we have the funding track, and then operations. What are the hard skills you need? When we talk about forecasting, what does that look like? How do you forecast? And from an operational perspective, how do you get really a lot better at what you do? The bottom line is about businesses, it's all about execution, right? So how do you ensure that you're executing on this grand dream or vision that you have in a really efficient way? So it's an amazing day. And then you get to, at the end of it all, you're getting to meet all of these incredible women building businesses, not only across the country, but across the world. We have people come in from all different countries as well. So you never know who you'll meet. We've had people meet co-founders, which we love to hear. Service providers have these long-term relationships that they establish there, and partnerships. So it's an amazing, magical day. Come prepared to meet people and mingle, and soak it all up.
Yes, we're so excited. And I see several people. Karen, we'll see you there. Katya, we'll see you there. Jennifer, we'll see you there. We have so many wonderful speakers this year. I see Liz Elting Teams is here in the chat today. She's a self-made billionaire. She's amazing. We're so excited to have her on a panel. Monique Rodriguez had one of the largest exits for a Black founder. We have Sunira, who also exited at $1 billion plus. The founder of Poppy. We just have the most wonderful people who have been there, done that, and really got scrappy to get to where they are. So they're the people who you want to learn from. And I saw some questions about how to find advisors and mentees or mentors. This is the place to do it. We have networking throughout the day as well. So I'm excited to see you all there. This is my first time in New York. So except, one time I was
Wait,
supposed
ever?
to. Yeah. I went there once and there was a complete snowstorm, so I didn't leave my hotel. So this is I've lived all over the
My
globe.
mind is blown. I didn't know this about Avery. We've been planning this for 7 months, and this is the
Never
first time.
been.
Wow.
No,
So everybody, we're gonna have to, tell Avery what the great places are too.
Yeah, send me all your recommendations, but super excited. Yes. Yes, you used Dream Ventures code. Super excited, Mariana. Okay, amazing. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Allie. I will see you all, I don't know, sometime this week. Yeah, Thursday. I'll see you all Thursday. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.